How long can innocence be crushed before heaven erupts? How far can the wicked stretch their hands toward glory before fire rains down? And when the last laugh fades, who will still be standing? The ones who plotted your ruin, or the one God himself has chosen? Chosen one. This is no longer a hidden story whispered in the dark. This is the hour when God's wrath ignites like thunder cracking across a silent sky. Every treachery, every stolen honor, every night you wept in secret has been carved into heaven's courtroom as evidence. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord, Romans 12:19, and the repayment has already begun. The same hands that tried to bury you are trembling under the weight of their own schemes. And you, the one they thought finished, are rising as God's living proof. Under the crushing weight of betrayal, your soul has been reforged in holy fire. Under the glare of their false glory, your true crown has been hidden until this very hour. Isaías 60:1 declares, Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Their empire collapses brick by brick, but your foundation is being laid in gold. If this fire is already burning in your chest right now, mark this moment by dropping 777 inches, the comments to say, I will not be defined by their lies. And to every single supporter who has sown into this mission, especially through Super, thanks, your faith and generosity are not forgotten. You are the echo that carries this truth past the noise. Stay with me, because the next part of this message will not just tell you what's happening, it will show you why your pain has turned into a weapon heaven is now wielding. What comes next isn't survival, it's reversal. The atmosphere has shifted, justice is moving, and in a moment, you'll see exactly how God is about to turn their demand for glory into their downfall. God's chosen ones. God's wrath ignites, the innocent broken. The wicked demand glory. They didn't merely stain your name, they arraigned their own souls in a cosmic courtroom and signed the docket with ink that does not fade. When falsehoods marched against you, it wasn't small-town chatter drifting away with a weekend breeze, it was a campaign precise as a scalpel, cold as a winter blade, aimed to strip you of dignity and rename you in public. Yet the judge who bringeth forth thy righteousness as the light was present, Psalm 37:6, and the record stands. They did not simply twist events, they engineered narratives and sold tickets to the spectacle. The pain that hums through bone when a story is forged about you has a physics to it. Slander acts like a weaponized frequency, a dark resonance tuned to shatter identity at its natural frequency. Saying, you made a mistake, is conflict. Declaring, you are the mistake, is character assassination. They tried to drape your innocence in their guilt and counted on applause. Yet an eye keener than any stitch still rules, for nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest. Luke 8:17. Reversal, however, is written into creation. Soil meant for burial becomes a nursery. Dirt to a seed is not a grave, but a greenhouse for roots. Under pressure, ice undergoes regulation, refreezing along stronger lines, and bamboo in monsoon, rainbows without breaking. Then returns upright. The peregrine falcon dives and partners with gravity to rise in power. Their words tried to bury you. Nature keeps telling a different story of resilience that refuses to be cancelled. Somewhere in the middle of the storm, quiet questions begin to rise from the heart. Where did their boldness spring from, power or panic? Which part of your calling dimmed when they renamed you? What room in your inner house stayed locked because a rumor stood guard? And when dawn breaks, will your life be only the scar, or the healer who carries it? They targeted you because control slipped from their grasp. Fabricated fables are never invested in those who carry no weight. Your presence recalibrated the room's gravity, and insecure hearts, feeling their orbit wobble, resorted to counterfeit astronomy and cast you as the eclipse. Their gossip sprinted hard. Yet the lip of truth shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. Proverbs 12:19. Sprints end, sunrises endure, time conducts its forensic audit, and masks peel under the heat lamp of providence. None of this was careless, it was calculated. Smiles on stage, poison in the wings, rumors conducted like a pit orchestra until strangers hummed suspicions. Predators misread the hour when prey remembers its teeth. Under scrutiny, integrity finds its form in psychology. Their barbs expose projection and cognitive dissonance. In physics, your purpose is signal, and their noise only sharpens the signal-to-noise ratio. History echoes your moment. Ignaz Semmelweis, the Hungarian physician who warned that unwashed hands spread death, was ridiculed and marginalized. Later, the world named his warning wisdom and his name necessity. Truth often arrives as a minority report. Small at first, unstoppable later. This is why the promise stands. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. Not as license for carelessness, but as courage for precision. The architecture of your identity is not a pop-up tent. The master builder lays courses with intention, faith as footing, character as the load-bearing wall, hope as the flying buttress that keeps a cathedral upright in storm. Their lies tried to introduce structural fatigue, and grace quietly redistributed the load. Under this banner, the arts lend a single, steady chord, as the hymn declares. A mighty fortress is our God. The fortress is not for permanent hiding, it is refuge to regain strength before striding back into daylight. Reputation tempered like steel from a furnace. Inevitably, accusations turned mirror bright. They shouted, unstable, and slipped on the oil they poured. They cried, dishonest, while their own timelines contradicted themselves. They stamped problem across your forehead and walked out, wearing it like a billboard. Entropy catches their castles, scaffolds groan, facades cannot bear the load of pretense. Time does not just cancel lies, it converts them into evidence about the liar's character. Courage also wears ordinary clothes. Lena, a junior teacher from a coastal town, refused to alter grades for a favored student. Whispers rose, rigid, unfair, jealous, and for months she walked beneath that weather. An audit finally surfaced, spotless records and gentle emails urging tutoring, and the supposed scandal broke like a wave against a seawall of evidence. The principal apologized. Students applauded. Jacaranda blossoms on her morning walk scattered like violet confetti seasons shift. And narratives do too. As for a clear antagonist, consider Darrow, a mid-level executive who fancied himself a kingmaker. He fed anonymous tips through rumor pipelines to cripple rivals. Polished in diction and hollow in ethics. Consequences arrived with chat logs, timestamps, and payouts. Contracts dissolved, mentorships evaporated, and Darrow learned the sound of a vacuum when applause stops, silence that roars. Predators don't retire, they are retired by truth. Courage must also stand on practical ground. Keep a careful ledger, timelines, emails, screenshots, names of witnesses. Present your case once with calm clarity and verifiable facts. Decline the rumor circuit that trades in adrenaline, and then hand the remainder to time and to providence. The quiet discipline of evidence is not vengeance, it is stewardship. For nights that felt without end, hold this promise near, rejoice not against me. O mine enemy, when I fall, I shall arise. Micah 7-8. Silence is not surrender. Sometimes it is the acoustics where truth travels farthest. Root yourself like cedar while the stage lights are re-aimed. When your cue arrives, step forward with composure, with receipts, with a name that has been tried and found true. So rise, square your shoulders, reclaim the architecture of your calling. Stone by stone, close the rumor mill with evidence. Walk back into the rooms that once tried to erase you. The storm has met its match. Justice has a long stride. And truth keeps the room. The same mouths that turned against the innocent are suddenly remembering the truth, shaping apologies with trembling lips, while the architects of deception stand in the wreckage of their own blueprints. This is the cycle now opening beneath your feet. Their words did not merely bruise, they shackled the speakers to consequences. Like anchors, they forged themselves. When falsehood is hurled at one who carries light, heaven does not misplace the file it records, and each lie becomes fresh ballast on the ankles of those still pretending to swim. A quiet doubt may circle your heart. Do you need to swing back? To rewrite the headlines? To clear your own name? The answer arrives like a gavel. The case has already moved to a higher court, and survival has already entered as Exhibit A. Silence was never weakness, it was sworn testimony. Testimony doesn't need to shout, it needs to endure. While you waited in what felt like stillness, the docket filled. For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad. Luke 8:17. What happens next is retribution, yet not the kind you deliver. It is the kind that rearranges lives without theatrics. The kind that turns false words into spotlights that cannot be escaped. You will notice restlessness in rooms once dominated by certainty, a kiva in voices once smooth, stories tripping over their own feet as fabrications collide mid-sentence. That sound, faint then growing, is the ledger being settled. 4 questions rise like lanterns over a river at night, where, deep down, did your courage refuse to die? Which chapter of your calling has waited for this verdict to be read? What part of your heart still carries the label someone else slapped on it? And when the door finally swings wide, how much of your strength will you allow to stride through? You are not waiting for permission. You are witnessing the harvest of seeds you did not plant. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6-7. Creation itself keeps preaching your story with fresh metaphors. After a mountain wildfire, fireweed is often the first to burst through ash, magenta pennants, declaring the ground is not finished. Along black volcanic plains, new soil forms from cooled lava, and vineyards have been known to root in that unlikely earth. In winter's end, the snowdrop cuts a path through crusted ice with a green spear of hope, and somewhere far above coasts, the Arctic tern completes its vast migration, circling the planet with stamina that confounds maps, endurance. It turns out, writes clearer truth than gossip. Your name is tracing that kind of flight path steady. Precise. impossible to cancel. The liars did not just offend you, they lied in front of the only witness that matters. So the verdict is not a rumor, it is written. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. Isaiah 54:17. Condemnation here is not your rage, it is the quiet arrival of evidence that refuses to blink. Their restlessness, their revisions, their collapse into contradictions, that is the judgment reading itself aloud. A new antagonist steps into focus. Mercer, a regional campaign strategist admired for networking genius and his silver ribbon on every charity gala. He curated anonymous dossiers, nudged editors, and fed small fires that became public storms. The outcomes looked tidy until a pattern emerged. Timestamps, burner accounts, a payment routed through a shell foundation. Contracts paused, donors withdrew, a board seat vanished in a single closed-door vote. The awards on his wall could not intercept the emails stamped with his initials. The man who orchestrated silence was suddenly surrounded by it. Actions carry inertia. Character writes its own headline. Heaven's anger on your behalf is not theatrics, it is architecture. And he shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, and thy judgment as the noonday. Psalm 37:6. The blueprint has load-bearing grace. Your role? Walk forward with dignity that does not rattle. Honor is returning to your name in ways that feel like morning shadows shrinking against the curb. Edges of things becoming crisp again. Do not spend one more heartbeat chasing someone else's downfall. Gravity is already working that equation. Your focus is ascent. Each measured step you take becomes a living exhibit, reminding the world who was guilty and who was clean all along. You may still hear the ghosts of rumor pass by your window at night. They are not omens, they are unpaid debts trying to collect themselves. Your story is not fading, the noise is. And for every private night that left you hollow, a line has been waiting, rejoice not against me. O mine enemy, when I fall, I shall arise. Micah 7-8. Rising here is not an idea, it is muscle, breath, calendar entries, a spine that learned how to stay straight under weight. It is the sacred discipline of holding your peace while heaven handles the math. There is more. Apologies will come in at odd hours, short messages, hesitant pauses in hallways, phone calls that begin with, I was wrong. Accept them or release them, either way. Their purpose is already complete. They mark the turning of the tide. And when fear whispers that the stain will remain, listen again. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. Psalm 23-5. A table is not a hiding place. It is a stage for restored dignity. So stand tall. Do not shrink. Do not flinch. The same lies that threaten to erase you are now the drumline announcing your survival. And survival is the one chapter they will never overwrite. Lift your head, chosen one. Step back into your assignment. Walk like a verdict already delivered. A name already cleared. A light already seen across the valley. The debt is being called. The masks are dissolving. The room is tilting toward truth. Rise now, rise with holy calm, with steady breath, with a future that refuses to be postponed. They did not simply mistreat you, they took aim at the decree that lifted you. Their jeers weren't a critique of personality tics or awkward moments. They were a revolt against selection itself, a tantrum at the throne's decision to weight your name with gravity. This was never about petty dislike. It was defiance. They weren't furious about what you did. They were inflamed by who you are under a mandate they cannot edit. For promotion cometh neither from the east nor from the west, but God is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up another. Psalm 75:6-7. That is why their attack felt dangerous. They weren't testing your manners, they were contesting jurisdiction. If anonymity had cloaked you, they would have scrolled past your life. But you walked into rooms with a quiet center, and the light re-angled. Fragile egos fracture under a simple truth. Favor is not a commodity they can bid for. Envy is never about your harvest. It is about their imagined entitlement to your field. The moment applause did not land where they rehearsed. They could not metabolize rejection. Rather than study their own scarcity mindset, a psychological feedback loop that turns comparison into corrosion, they nominated you as the enemy. The stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner. Psalm 118-22. Rejection, repurposed, becomes architecture. A set of questions begins to stir beneath the ribs. Where did you first sense that your assignment carried weight beyond resume lines? Which door inside you has stayed closed because someone's verdict hovered in the hallway? What scripts did others write that never fit the cadence of your calling? And when the stage tilts your way again, how much authority will you allow your voice to carry? You are not the accident in their narrative. You are the exception that exposes the rules were stacked. Your presence acts like a mirror they cannot sidestep. Real power refuses to audition for approval. It runs on source, not on polls. Before I formed thee in the belly I knew thee, and before thou camest forth I sanctified thee. Jeremiah 1-5. That is selection, not popularity. It is calling, not choreography. They expected polish they could manage, a persona that would resonate with their club's frequency response. Instead, the choice fell on you, flawed yet watchful, tender yet immovable, creating a phase shift their social circuitry wasn't designed to handle. In systems theory, you altered the homeostasis of the group. In game theory, you refused the zero-sum frame where their win requires your erasure. What they mocked, heaven altered. For the Lord seeth not as man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. 1 Samuel 16-7. Selection isn't cosmetics, it is core sample. Their outrage was a resonance failure. They amplified noise, mistook it for signal, and discovered the room still tuned itself to your pitch. In the physics of light, envy tries to refract identity, bending it away from true course, yet the source remains coherent. In the language of architecture, God set a keystone over your arch. Pressure only locks the stones more tightly along the load path. Witness how holy blueprints work in ordinary streets. Mara is a municipal librarian who runs story hour after her morning shift. She speaks softly, archives carefully, and never plays the politics of glare. A new supervisor paraded metrics and belittled the quiet types. Budgets shifted away from community programs toward splashy campaigns. Whispers feathered the air. Mara lacks charisma. Mara is stuck in the past. Then the data arrived. Attendance graphs rose where her programs ran. Literacy outcomes spiked. Donor notes mentioned her by name. A city paper profiled the Librarian Rebuilding Trust. One child at a time. The supervisor's presentation deck could not drown the footnotes of lives changed. In signal detection terms, the false positives, flash without fruit, collapsed. True positives, quiet labor with outcomes, stood luminous. They called your authenticity a threat because it disarmed their theater. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, Romans 9:15, cuts through the room like a plumb line. Mercy and mandate are not awarded by committees with clipboards. Their fury deepened each time your presence rerouted spotlights without begging for them. And yet, beneath theatrics, there is a second story. Your heart learning the quiet interval between battles, the slow breath, the sacred pause, the contemplative tempo where strategies mature and motives are sifted. In that hush, ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, that ye should shew forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. 1 Peter 2-9. Identity becomes liturgy, movement becomes witness. They staged a campaign to prove you unremarkable. But the room kept recalibrating, as if an unseen meta-architecture governed the space. Picture a cantilevered bridge, the farther the reach, the more exact the counterweight. Your reach unsettled them because they could not see the counterweight prayer layered in pre-dawn hours. Disciplines hidden in the scaffolding of your days, where crowds demanded chandeliers. Heaven installed buttresses, where critics measured optics. Heaven measured load-bearing truth. The result was a structure that looked quieter than it was strong. A final pair of reflections moves the plot forward. You do not need to apologize for carrying a crown you did not craft. And you do not need to shrink to fit a doorway built to keep you out. There is tenderness in your eyes, compassion for those still trapped inside mirrors, and there is firmness too. You can bless a room while refusing its manipulation. You can serve without surrendering your center. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. 1 Peter 5-6. Exaltation here is not glitter, it is placement, right piece, right beam, right span. So walk on. Let your steps land with the cadence of verdicts already read. Where their parody tried to detune you, hold pitch. Where labels tried to box you, widen the frame. Accept that some will misname providence as luck or politics. Keep building anyway. Your life is a sanctuary under construction, altar set. Columns true. Light wells opening. When doors swing, pass through them with a calm that needs no megaphone. Lift your head. Chosen one. Take your place on foundations that do not fail. Rise now, rise with holy gravity, with the poise of those who know whose signature is on the blueprint, with courage that turns rooms and heals them. Nothing unmasks pretenders faster than the rise of the authentic your rise. Your steady center made their theatrics look brittle. Your quiet strength made their volume sound like panic. The sting they feel is not about decibels. It is about truth. Your presence reminded them they were not passed over for being too soft-spoken, but for being untrue. This was never about quirks or misunderstandings. It was a revolt against selection itself. For promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, but God is the judge. He putteth down one, and setteth up another. Psalm 75-6-7. That line didn't flatter you. It confronted them. They responded with a chorus of denial, as if noise could veto a decree. Picture a shore where hands are raised against the tide, not to worship, but to scold the moon for moving water, or a crowd beneath storm clouds issuing commands to the rain. Such protest doesn't reverse the weather. It reveals the folly of fighting laws that won't be bent by pride. For we can do nothing against the truth, but for the truth. 2 Corinthians 13-8. The harder they pushed against what was settled, the more they advertised why the mantle never rested on them. Here, 4 questions rise quiet. Intercede. inescapable. Where did your courage first learn to breathe without an audience? Which label pasted on you by strangers still tries to govern your pace when the light tilts your way again? How much authority will you allow your voice to carry? And when the room tests you with applause or absence, will your center remain anchored to source or drift toward performance? The irony sharpened with every jab. Aligned hearts don't wage war on rightful decisions, they recognize them. People calibrated to truth don't spend oxygen dismantling what wasn't built by human hands. They bless. They study. They grow. But the insecure attempted to rewrite destiny with rumor and sabotage, and in doing so, stamped a verdict across their own foreheads. Unready. Jealousy is what failure wears when it refuses to admit the loss. Watch their tells brittle laughter, restless eyes, the strange need to perform indifference while craving attention. None of it rearranges the fact that there is no wisdom nor understanding nor counsel against the Lord. Proverbs 21:30. Your existence interrupted their script because authenticity bends light differently. John wrote, "The light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not." John 1-5. That verse is not an insult to the dark. It is an explanation of why hostility intensified when you entered the scene with coherence. Coherence unsettles counterfeit order. You did not audition for a role. You walked in bearing assignment. They insisted you were an accident of timing. Heaven called you an answer to timing. A brief witness from the world of art reinforces the point. Makoto Fujimura, a contemporary painter known for integrating Japanese Nihonga techniques with faith-infused themes, often references kintsugi, the mending of shattered vessels with gold, arguing that repaired fractures can become the most beautiful lines. That is not hype, it is craft. Your story carries the same aesthetic, where mockery swung a hammer. Grace traced seams with gold, turning breaks into brilliance. The very lines they tried to use against you are becoming the gilded architecture of your credibility. They didn't only dislike your placement, they sneered at the wisdom that placed you. They mocked fairness, order, justice, the throne of balance itself. What happens when people mock order? The cosmos does not debate, it corrects. Imagine a courtroom where the guilty jeer at the bench, confident that comedy equals immunity. Their whispers slink through corridors as if statute were suggestion. Yet verdicts are not rewritten by punchlines, and the gavel does not need applause. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. Isaiah 54-17. Condemnation here isn't your rage, it's the slow arrival of reality receipts. Timelines, contradictions reading itself aloud. While they taunted, you endured. While stones flew, you gathered them and built. Where they tried to strip dignity, you wore silence like armor discipline, not defeat. They mistook restraint for guilt. Patience has now done what their attacks could never prevent. It has proved you right. Mockery is the last tool of the powerless. If they could have outworked you, they would have. If they could have outlived you, they'd have tried. If they could have matched your presence, they would have rehearsed it. With capacity lacking, they selected ridicule, a recycled insecurity that describes them more than it defines you. A single scene from sacred art captures this reversal. In Gregorio Allegri's Miserere, a lone treble line climbs above a tapestry of voices, not to dominate, but to illumine the harmony beneath it. When a counterfeit voice tries to mimic the ascent, the piece destabilizes. When the true line returns, the harmony settles and the room exhales. Your assignment functions like that treble line. It doesn't crush, it clarifies. Where imitation reaches for spotlight. Vocation restores pitch. Still, a human question lingers. Will they ever admit what they did? Will apologies arrive? Will the record be set straight by their lips? Many won't. Pride thickens, delusion calcifies. Yet confession can arrive through collapse. Losses become apologies that the mouth refuses to form. Silence, once loud with verdicts, turns into evidence of humiliation. Justice often sounds like stress fractures in a lie subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, the inner sciences of your resilience keep working. In psychology, this is affect regulation, the capacity to absorb volatility without surrendering your core. In physics, it's coherence. Your signal holds amid noise because the source remains stable. In architecture, it's load path. Weight is transferred into foundations, not into facade. Their project was optics. Yours is engineering. Outcomes will always reveal the difference. If the world needs a simple citizen's parable, hear Ava's. She is a first-year paramedic who carries a calm voice in ambulances at 3 a.m. A clique at the station called her too quiet, then rolled eyes when families asked for her by name. One night, a multi-car collision hit the county. Ava triaged without spectacle, documented every metric, stabilized a child whose pulse had dipped to a whisper, and later wrote the report that aligned agencies and timelines. No billboard announced it. A supervisor read the logs, then quietly reassigned leadership on training nights. The mockers didn't resign, they just stopped laughing. In data terms, noise dropped, signal held. So what is left for you to do? Not to chase their downfall. Gravity has its own schedule, but to keep walking with a cadence learned in the hush between storms. Refuse rehearsal for roles you were never given. Release rooms that prefer performance to truth. Bless without bending into pretense. And guard that inner conversation where 4 lantern questions keep the path bright. Will you rule your gift or let the crowd curate it? Will you wear names you never agreed to? Will you translate calling into choreography to be palatable? Will you trade endurance for applause? This is not bravado. It is placement. The universe has ruled. You were chosen, they were not. That is not cruelty. That is clarity. Their mockery was the loudest proof that you carry what they lack. And their resistance, the clearest sign that investment rests on your life. Reality has already rendered its judgment. The signature is dry. The seal holds. You stand where you stand, not by algorithm or clique, but by decree. The stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner. Psalm 118-22. Rise now. Lift your head without hurry. Walk into assignments with the poise of one who knows the blueprint isn't up for public vote. Speak when needed with facts and mercy. Work when unobserved with the same precision. Rest without apology. Because rest is part of the mandate. Their laughter was never power, it was panic. Their rumors were never truth, they were masks. Your role is not to argue with masks, but to move through rooms until only faces remain. Step forward. Chosen one. Carry the light that unsettles counterfeit order and heals the honest. The gavel has fallen, and it falls in your favor. They did not merely want you criticized, they wanted you ruined because your innocence lit the corners where their decay hid. The guilty never fear lies, they fear a clean presence that makes concealment impossible. You were never the threat because of wrongdoing, you were the threat because none could be found. That single difference turned envy into open war. Your calm made their turbulence audible. Your steady pulse exposed their frantic tempo. And your clean hands, he that hath clean hands, and a pure heart, Psalm 24:4, stood like a lamp in a basement full of leaking stories. The frenzy around you was not random, it was strategy. A circle formed, not because you howled, but because you didn't. Stillness offended them. Peace sounded like indictment. You would not join the chorus that kept their chaos humming. And so they tried to make noise the judge. Yet, whoever walks in integrity walks securely. Proverbs 10:9. ESV. And security, held long enough, starts to read like evidence. Your refusal to wrestle in the mud collapsed their scaffolding of excuses, the moment blame met a life without matching stains. Its weight fell back on the accusers. You didn't have to argue, merely existing in truth told the story they had spent years burying. A set of questions rises quietly in the ribcage and does not go away. Where did your peace learn to breathe under pressure? Which memory tries to convince you that gentleness is weakness? What name did they paste on your forehead that never belonged to you? And when the next accusation arrives, how will you keep your pulse from becoming their metronome? They needed you dirty anything to justify the sludge already swirling around their ankles. Purity threatened to unravel the whole narrative. So bite appeared, cornering, prodding, the cunning setup designed to make you snap. You did not. That restraint infuriated them. Escalation followed. Exaggerations. Staged scenes. A villain's mask painted with your features. The goal was annihilation, credibility erased, influence buried, honor stripped. But speed is not lifespan. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Matthew 5:10 carries a promise that outlives headlines. They went digging for dirt and sank into their own pit. Mud does not care who stirred it first. Creation keeps preaching your story with images they never studied. In high forests, a sequoia's cones open widest. After fire, the very heat meant to destroy becomes the signal to release seed. On wind-polished cliffs, the alpine ibex stands sure-footed where panic would slip. Balance is not loud, but it is sovereign. Across transparent wings, the glass-wing butterfly moves with a kind of holy invisibility. The world sees through the wing, yet cannot deny the flight. And down in the soil, a cicada emerges after long silence. Timing written in its bones, delay is not denial when the clock is underground. Your innocence has that kind of timing, that kind of balance, that kind of release. Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6-7. The field is answering now. The universe does not argue with rebellion, it issues correction. You can hear it in subtle places. First, the tremor in the voice that once mocked. The edits that begin creeping into their stories. The way timelines trip over chat logs and receipts. Silence becomes a mirror turned back on them. The same rooms that cheered the smear now press their lips thin and avert their eyes. Vengeance is not your assignment. Vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord. Romans 12:19. And repayment rarely asks your permission to begin. By way of clear transition, meet Selwyn, a compliance manager praised for impeccable standards and a talent for tidy reports. He cultivated anonymous tips, pressured junior staff to fix phrasing, and floated suggestive doubts about your work. For a season, the narrative held. Then a forensic review aligned metadata with meeting minutes, and found the edits, timestamps, deletions, and a private message where he wrote, "Make it look inconsistent." Certification authorities suspended his license pending investigation. A client terminated a contract. The firm's board moved him to unpaid leave. The irony he never planned for, the policy he weaponized, became the rule that unseated him. Actions write their own affidavits. Where does this leave you? Not in a courtroom of noise, but in a sanctuary of steady steps. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17 was never a pass to grandstand. It is oxygen for patience. Keep your documents. Keep your dates. Speak once, clearly, with verifiable fact. And let time do what time does best. Peel the mask from a lie without tearing your hands in the process. Your restraint is not emptiness, it is discipline. Your quiet is not absence, it is testimony. And testimony does not need to shout, it needs to endure. Another set of questions steadies the path forward. Which boundaries must stay firm so your peace remains intact? Where will you place your attention so their storm does not rent space in your mind? What daily practice will keep your conscience bright? And how will you celebrate small proofs of justice without letting triumph turn into taunting? The scales are tilting, not because you performed perfection, but because innocence refused to bend. Justice is no longer whispering. It has taken a breath and begun to roar. Their mockery was never power, it was panic. Their gossip was never truth, it was camouflage. Their aggression was never about you, it was about their fear that light would make rot visible, and it has problem. You are not here by luck or politics. You are here because a mandate outlasted a smear. Lift your head. Chosen one. Step forward like a verdict already read, a name already cleared, a future already purchased by faithfulness. Walk steady, work clean, refuse the chorus. Rise now with holy, calm, and unarguable evidence, because the roar you're hearing is not chaos, it's justice finding its voice. The quiet you lived through was not neglect, it was a docket filling. Silence did not stamp approval on their schemes. It signaled a case being built so airtight no loophole could breathe. They mistook stillness for surrender and imagined delay as permission. Yet when heaven goes quiet, it does not go blind, for nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest. Luke 8:17. The hush was a courtroom without spectators. The pen moving steadily, while every whisper, every counterfeit handshake, every smile hiding a blade was logged with time, place, and witness. Picture an offshore barometer dropping while the surface looks harmless, no whitecaps, no thunderheads, and yet the pressure gradient is already shifting the deep. That's what circled you, not emptiness, but compression. Patience here was not absence, it was precision. Step in too soon, and your strength gets mislabeled as rescue. Wait until the pattern reveals itself, and resilience becomes incontestable. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, though it tarry. Wait for it, because it will surely come. Habakkuk 2-3. The interval they mocked as inactivity was actually an audit. A forensic chain of custody on truth. You endured without snapping, without staining your hands, without letting their chaos tune your heartbeat. That endurance changed the physics of the room. Lies raced ahead like foam, truth moved like a deep current, and deep current wins the coastline. A pair of questions rises now like buoys on that water. Which part of your spirit learned to breathe below the noise? And which labels pasted on you by impatient observers must be peeled off before you step into the next assignment? Their relief during the lull was misread as freedom. They walked deeper into their own file. adding entries with each performance. Assuming the silence meant the record was closed, but the ledger was still open, and a second pair of questions steadies your steps. When the storm makes landfall, will you answer with facts or with fury? And how will you guard your peace so verdicts don't drag you back into battles already decided? Be sure your sin will find you out. Numbers 32-23 is not a threat tossed into the wind. It is the inevitability of a pattern colliding with proof. To make this clear in street-level terms, meet Rena, a night shift inventory lead at a mid-size warehouse. She is ordinary by every loud metric and exceptional by the quiet ones' accurate counts. Clean transfers, gentle notes to new hires. A small clique disliked her calm. They floated rumors that she doctored numbers to make her team look flawless. Management watched silently for months, no memos. No fireworks. Then came the time-stamped scan logs, the camera angles, the forklift telematics, the handover sheets that matched to the item. The silence had been an audit. The report landed on a Thursday. Rena's record, spotless. The clique caught swapping labels across pallets. 2 suspensions. 1 termination. A mandatory retraining protocol for the rest. No gloating. No speech. Just correction, precise and final. Creation itself has been staging parables for you. In materials, science. Creep under sustained load reveals weak alloys over time. Counterfeit character fails in slowness, not in spectacle. In thermodynamics, latent heat builds invisibly before phase change. Ice looks stable until a single degree tips it into motion. In acoustics, resonance breaks glass only when the frequency is exact. Your patience kept you off their frequency, so you didn't shatter, you held. In architecture, the keystone doesn't announce itself while scaffolding stands. Once the false supports are removed, the arch that was true carries weight, and the imitation collapses. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6-7. You asked why it lasted so long, why the end didn't arrive sooner. Because interference would have let them blame the referee. Time forced the tape to play without edits, stretched across weeks and then months. The pattern painted itself in full color. The same hands signing peace wrote plot in private. The same mouths preaching fairness traded in sabotage. The stillness they jeered at became the seal on their own file. Rope was given not as a gift, but as proof, and the loop they tied in secret has tightened by consequence, not by your fingers. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Romans 12:19. You don't have to be the hammer. Truth carries its own weight. Another quiet set of questions keeps your center aligned. Which boundaries will protect your name without poisoning your heart? What daily liturgy will keep your conscience bright while the room recalibrates? How will you celebrate justice without turning victory into taunting? And where will you place gratitude so praise strengthens discipline rather than replacing it? Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Psalm 37:7 is not passivity, it's posture shoulders low, receipts ready, soul uncluttered. So here is the turn. The wave has reached shore. Not exaggerated, not edited, just the clean impact of accumulated water. Their laughter has thinned into silence. Their confidence has tripped over its own timestamps. Their alliances, strong at noon, have begun to decay, like high-entropy states that can't hold structure. You were not forgotten. You were being defended in slow motion. The case is not merely filed, it is active. The verdict is not only written, it is moving. And in that motion, your dignity is not rescued. It is recognized. Stand now, not as a defendant gasping for air, but as a witness whose testimony matched the evidence. Lift your head with measured breath. Speak once, clear and clean. Keep walking like a metronome set to peace. The hush that once haunted you has done its work. The gavel that once felt late is exactly on time. Justice isn't whispering anymore, it's present tense. And you, chosen one, you are still here. Unbent, unbought, unmistakably carried by a hand that keeps records and keeps promises. They imagined you were the one on trial, sitting in their classroom with them holding the red pen of judgment. Each jab, each smirk, each bait dangled before you was, in their eyes, a test of your breaking point. But they miscalculated. You were never the one being examined, they were. The Lord trieth the righteous, but the wicked and him that loveth violence his soul hateth. Psalm 11:5. Every moment you endured quietly, every time you refused to collapse into their script, the spotlight turned back on them, revealing the depths of their impatience, the noise of their insecurity, the weakness of their cruelty. Imagine a magnifying glass raised against you, meant to burn holes, only to be turned the other way, so the sun scorched the hand that held it. That was the irony unfolding. Your silence reflected their chaos. Your calm unmasked their turbulence. A mirror cannot lie. It reflects what stands before it. And in that mirror they saw themselves, which was unbearable. For everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. John 3:20. Their attacks weren't examinations of your strength, they were evidence logged against their own corruption. Have you asked why you had to take so much? Why you were placed in a position of such strain? Because heaven already knew your tensile strength. In physics, when a beam is load tested, the goal is not to question the integrity of a steel column already proven. It is to measure the cracks in surrounding scaffolding. You were that column. Your calm, your endurance, your refusal to yield were not under investigation. The test was theirs. How far would they go when they believed consequence was asleep? How dark would their choices become when they thought nobody was watching? The silence of heaven wasn't approval, it was accumulation. Your life became a living case study of exposure. Every false smile that cloaked envy, every word masked as wisdom but sharpened as envy, every performance of concern that was truly control stood revealed simply because you stood firm. You were not their student, you were their mirror, and each time they twisted, they saw their own reflection. They could have turned away, sought humility, chosen light. Instead, they doubled down on cruelty, chose envy, swore allegiance to shadows. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6-7. Each decision was a seed, and the harvest is already cresting. Here 4 questions stir like fire under the ribs. What part of you discovered new resilience in their schemes? Which names they hurled at you still echo? And why do they echo no more? How many times did their silence try to convince you that heaven had forgotten? And when the mask finally fell, did you feel fear or did you feel release? Their cruelty wasn't random, it was evidence gathered. They thought it was a game. They believed they were spectators of your downfall. Yet in reality, they were defendants in a courtroom they didn't know existed. For God shall bring every work into judgment, with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. Ecclesiastes 12:14. The verdict was never about your collapse, it was about their exposure. A modern witness underscores this pattern. Darren, a factory floor supervisor, liked to pose as mentor while quietly sowing doubt about his younger colleague. Amira, he edited her reports, spread whispers about her inexperience, and smiled when questioned, as if protecting her. Management stayed silent for months, collecting logs, timestamps, and witness notes. When the audit concluded, the truth unfurled in full. His alterations were deliberate sabotage. His whispers carefully planted. He was dismissed with cause. While Amira was promoted to lead, Darren thought he was testing her. He was writing his own dismissal letter. Even the arts testify to this irony. In Shakespeare's Hamlet, the king stages a play to test Hamlet. But it is the king who cannot endure the reflection. His own guilt surfaces in the very performance he thought was control. The stage turns, and the examiner is revealed as the examined. Such is the fate of those who scheme. They build their own gallows, step onto their own trapdoors. The heathen are sunk down in the pit that they made. In the net which they hid is their own foot taken. Psalm 9:15. So, chosen one, rise with this clarity. You were never the defendant. You were the witness. Steady, enduring. The mirror held high. Their laughter was not triumph, it was terror disguised as glee. Their smirks were not power, they were cracks in their own mask. The trial was always theirs, and the evidence was always recording. And the verdict? They failed. You stand, and standing is your testimony. Lift your head, walk forward. Let your resilience preach louder than their mockery. The case is closed, and your endurance is the proof. They made you their scapegoat, convinced that casting you out would cleanse their stains. They thought breaking you would baptize them in innocence, that hurling you into the wolves' den would pacify their own demons. But what did they actually achieve? They wrote their guilt in permanent ink. Woe unto them that call evil good, and good evil. Isaiah 5:20. That is the banner flying over their actions. Chosen one. They didn't simply mistreat you, they sacrificed you on the altar of their own ego. They twisted your silence into guilt, your strength into arrogance, your discernment into rebellion. What they labeled justice was nothing more than envy in ceremonial robes. When wolves can't suppress their hunger, they invent a lamb to blame for the blood. That was their tactic. They needed someone to burn, someone to erase, someone to pin their failures on. And you were chosen not because of guilt, but because you were safe enough not to retaliate. That was their mistake. Innocence irritates corruption. Clean hands expose unwashed ones. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Matthew 5-8. Every time you refused to enter their mud pit, you became more intolerable to their shadows. Have you ever asked in the dark, why me? Why was I the one marked for destruction? The answer is jagged but liberating. Because your kindness revealed their cruelty. Because your restraint unmasked their lack of discipline. Because your clean record left them no excuse to hide behind. They weren't searching for redemption, they were searching for a victim. And their decision to cast you as the scapegoat is now the very rope tightening around their neck. Nature testifies to this irony. A volcano that buries a valley also fertilizes its soil. Fields eventually grow richer where fire once raged. The albatross, forced into exile over oceans, returns with wings strong enough to cross hemispheres. The baobab tree stores water silently in its thick trunk, standing as proof that endurance outlasts drought. And the Arctic fox, hunted for its coat, survives by changing color. With the seasons, innocence adapts, while predators exhaust themselves. What they thought would erase you has equipped you. What they meant as burial has become planting. Scripture anchors this reversal. The stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner. Psalm 118-22. Your rejection is being relayed as foundation. They wanted to discard you, but in discarding, they revealed their own cracks. Their mockery was never a verdict against you, it was an indictment of them. And because every story requires a clear villain. Hear this example. Mallory, a mid-level non-profit director, loved to appear as champion of fairness while funneling blame downward. When a financial audit neared, she pinned inconsistencies on an intern quiet, diligent, unlikely to protest. Memos were drafted, accusations whispered, but auditors followed digital trails, timestamps, signatures, author IDs. The truth surfaced. She had edited the files herself. Contracts dissolved. Donors withdrew. And Mallory resigned under scandal. Her attempt to create a scapegoat became the noose of her own downfall. Your tears, your insults absorbed, your betrayals swallowed, none of it vanished. Pain became evidence. Each entry in heaven's ledger added weight to their debt. For God shall bring every work into judgment, with every secret thing. Ecclesiastes 12:14. Silence did not protect them. Silence documented them. The stillness they mocked was the universe's most dangerous move, giving them enough rope to hang themselves. A chorus from Handel's Israel in Egypt once thundered. He sent a thick darkness over all the land. Darkness was not absence, it was judgment, cloaking Egypt before release came for Israel. In the same way, your silence was not weakness, it was discipline while justice gathered momentum. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord, Romans 12:19. And repayment has already begun. So rise. Chosen one, stand not as their victim, but as their verdict. Walk with dignity that does not need retaliation. Speak truth when needed. But let your survival itself be the loudest sermon. Their scapegoat has become their spotlight. Their plot has become their debt. And their downfall, that is the confession they refuse to speak. Lift your head. Step forward. The case is closed. The ledger balanced. And justice is roaring in your favor. They built their name on your wounds, as though your suffering were a stepping stone to their stage. Each time they dragged your story through the mud, they collected applause. Each humiliation became a headline. They turned your pain into their platform, your silence into their stage, your scars into their scripts. They strutted as heroes, victims, and sages all at once, feeding on your humiliation and mistaking manipulation for truth. Woe unto them that build a town with blood and establish a city by iniquity. Habakkuk 2:12. Reputation built on injustice is an unstable structure. It creaks while it climbs and collapses when weight shifts. They didn't just try to break you, they commodified you. They siphoned credibility off your name, thinking it would make them untouchable. But manipulation ages like milk. A question begins to echo in your chest. How long can a mask stay on before it suffocates its wearer? And another follows. When the applause fades, what happens to the hands that built their fame on another's ruin? The lip of truth shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. Proverbs 12:19. Nature itself is preaching your reversal. A glacier may seem still while carving valleys beneath. Its power is silent but irreversible. The strangler fig rises by wrapping another tree. But in time, its own weight hollows the host and itself. The firefly glows to attract mates, but also predators. The same light used to lure becomes the beacon of vulnerability. And the Venus flytrap snaps shut on a trigger, only to digest what it invited. Predators often dine on their own tactics. These living metaphors testify, dishonor may appear to flourish, but it is sowing the seed of its own undoing. Be sure your sin will find you out. Numbers 32-23. The universe is flipping the script in real time. The castles they built on your name are collapsing under their own weight. Their applause is fading, their audience restless. Their alliances unravel like poorly woven fabric. And as the cracks show, you may hear a whisper inside. Why did people believe them? Why did no one question their story sooner? Because manipulation works for a season, but fruit reveals its tree. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit. Matthew 7:18. The outcomes are starting to betray the image, even in the everyday world. This truth surfaces. Yvette, a shy community volunteer, was undermined by a local organizer who branded her ideas as his own, publicly criticizing her naivete while quietly harvesting her work. For months, his profile soared, but when the grant auditors visited, timelines, email trails, and community feedback aligned with Yvette's fingerprints, his funding collapsed. His board resigned, and Yvette was invited to lead the program she conceived. He built his reputation on her pain and discovered the foundation was sand. Sacred art also foreshadows this. In Bach's St. Matthew Passion, a single alto aria mourns betrayal while a complex chorus swirls. At first the betrayers seem to overpower the theme, but gradually the solitary voice ascends, unbroken, and the choir fragments into dissonance. This is not merely music, it is a map of reversal, where the exploited rises and the exploiters fall apart under their own noise. The stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner, Psalm 118-22. Another question hovers like a lighthouse beam. What will you do with vindication when it comes taunt or testify? And still another, which parts of your story will you share to heal others rather than to humiliate those who harmed you? These questions do not indict you. They guide you into stewardship of a comeback written without revenge. Silence was not weakness, it was strategy. You did not have to fight for vindication, you did not have to clap back. The universe is handling the reversal. And the same rooms where they tried to shame you are the very rooms where their shame now unfolds. This is not coincidence, this is correction. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, Isaiah 54-17. So rise. Chosen one. Your name is being restored organically, not by force, but by truth. Their rotten fruit is falling while your roots deepen. Real favor doesn't need performance, it stands on its own. Walk forward without bitterness. Wear vindication like a mantle of light, not a sword of vengeance. Their fame built on your pain is dissolving, your honor built on truth is rising. Lift your head. Step into the script rewritten for your favor. The universe was never neutral. It was never waiting to decide whether you were worthy or guilty. It was watching, recording, timing, allowing every whisper, every plotted scheme, every blade hidden behind a smile to inscribe itself in a permanent ledger. For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known. Luke 8:17. Patience wasn't weakness, it was precision. It was heaven handing them enough rope to strangle their own credibility while you stood still. You once mistook stillness for uncertainty. In the ache of betrayal, you may have whispered, "Was I somehow deserving of this?" Is heaven weighing both sides? Yet from the first moment, there was no question. Timing was never hesitation, it was strategy. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Exodus 14:14. Like a chess master, letting an opponent march pawns forward, thinking they are winning. Each move only positioned them closer to checkmate. Delay isn't denial. Delay is architecture, the way a cathedral's hidden buttresses bear weight until the dome can rise. It's physics, the slow build of potential energy before release. It's psychology, the long arc of exposure that reveals character under stress. Their trap was not your prison, it was their evidence file. As they built their false power structures, they stacked bricks on the wall of their own downfall. He made a pit and digged it, and is fallen into the ditch which he made. Psalm 7:15. Nature tells this story too. The jaguar stalks silently, not because it doubts, but because its stillness is the shape of power. When it moves, the strike is clean. Deep ocean trenches form under immense pressure, but that pressure also births new islands. Delay is not emptiness, it's creation unseen. The eucalyptus, in dry seasons, drops its bark to expose a smooth surface, so fires pass without catching patience as protection. The snow leopard disappears into the white, not to retreat but to prepare the leap. In the same way, your patience disguised your positioning, their noise disguised their unraveling. Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6-7. They mistook patience for permission because no lightning struck mid-lie. Every false word was another brick in their own collapse. And now, the scales have tipped. Their carefully curated images rot in the light. Their alliances unravel like seams in rotten cloth. Their false power structures are crumbling, their influence, like ice under a rising sun, is thinning into water. Perhaps you've asked in the quiet, why didn't it end sooner? Why was I left standing in so much unfairness? Why didn't intervention arrive when I cried out? Because justice that comes too quickly can be called bias. Justice that arrives after exposure becomes undeniable. The weight you carried was not to test you, but to reveal them fully. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, though it tarry. Wait for it. Habakkuk 2.3. Waiting turned suspicion into evidence and evidence into verdict. The reversal is also visible in everyday life. Idris, an unknown municipal engineer, spent years designing flood protections while his department head took credit. Each audit delay felt like neglect. When the rains came, only Idris's section held, the credited boss's sections failed, and the paper trail showed who had done the real work. The head resigned, Idris was promoted and publicly thanked. Silence had been strategy, delay had been documentation. In sacred art, this pattern sings. In Pergolesi's Stabat Mater, a fragile soprano line stretches over a churning continuo. At first, the tension seems endless. But at the climax, the bass resolves and the line soars triumphant. Patience becomes victory's overture. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Isaiah 54-17 is not a slogan, it is a structural truth. Schemes collapse under their own load-bearing contradictions. So stand, chosen one, You no longer have to plead your case. The verdict is written. The same silence that once gave them room is now the silence that buries them publicly. Completely. Permanently. Lift your head. Step forward into vindication without venom. Walk with the calm of one whose foundation has held through the tremors. The scales have shifted, the checkmate is set, the balance is broken in your favor. Rise now, your endurance is the evidence. Your survival, the sentence. Your future, the proof. They weren't waging war on your present, they were terrified of your future. They didn't swing at who you were, they struck at the shadow of who you were becoming. A shadow too powerful for their illusions to survive. Before I formed thee in the belly I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb I sanctified thee. Jeremiah 1-5. That verse isn't sentiment, it's blueprint. They glimpsed flashes of the healed, elevated, unstoppable version of you, and it set their stomachs turning. Your potential was a mirror for their stagnation. Your quiet ascent rattled their scaffolding of control. Fear does not fight what is. Fear fights what is coming. That's why their attacks felt relentless. They weren't punishing mistakes, they were preemptively striking destiny. They sensed the fire before you felt the flame. They saw the platform before you stepped onto it. The light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. John 1-5. Darkness can't comprehend growth, so it tries to suffocate it. The seed barely breaks the soil, and panic erupts about the size of the tree it might become. That's how they treated you. They saw strength forming quietly beneath the surface, and rushed to cut you down before you could grow. They spread rumors, twisted truths, manufactured drama to choke your credibility before fruit could appear. A question rises like a drumbeat. How much of their war was about you at all? And how much was about their terror of what they saw in your horizon? Another follows. Which parts of you are already standing tall beyond their reach while you're still measuring your own height? Nature preaches this reversal constantly. The baobab starts as a sapling but grows into a living reservoir, storing water enough to outlast drought. The kestrel hovers seemingly still, but is mapping currents, waiting for precision to strike. The desert rose looks brittle until rains awaken hidden blooms, and the Atlantic puffin burrows underground for years, surfacing when its wings are ready for open sea. Burial and planting share the same posture until the seed breaks ground. Except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die. It abideth alone, but if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. John 12:24. They thought they were ending you. They were preparing your unveiling. Their schemes became their own exhaustion, their arsenal empty while your roots deepened. Your patience exposed their panic. Your silence became a megaphone for their noise. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. Each rumor they flung was a rehearsal for your resilience. Each trap was an accidental stage for your testimony. A third question stirs in your chest. If their efforts to erase you built the platform you stand on, what will you build on it? Retaliation or restoration? And a fourth. How will you inhabit the power they feared without replicating the cruelty they showed? A real-world echo underscores the pattern. Leora, an unknown textile designer in a coastal town, quietly patented a sustainable dye technique. A larger firm dismissed her as naive and leaked partial drafts of her idea to discredit her before launch. She stayed silent, kept refining. When her full process debuted at an international expo, the firm's copycat version was exposed under lab tests, and buyers left en masse for Leora's authentic product. Their preemptive strike had built the global stage she needed. Sacred art carries the same melody. In Haydn's The Creation, the chaos of the overture gradually yields to a single bright chord, and there was light. Tension becomes unveiling. Darkness can delay but not delete a rising chord. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivereth him out of them all. Psalm 34-19. They tried to assassinate your reputation before your platform could rise. Yet every lie, every betrayal, every attempt to bury you built the stage for your unveiling. You rise not by clapping back, not by forcing revenge, but by existing as undeniable proof that no scheme prospered. Your rise itself is the judgment. Your success is the rebuttal. And nothing terrifies them more than watching you become everything they feared you would be. Lift your head now. Step forward into the life they tried to erase. Rise with calm. Rise with proof. Rise with the grace of one who outgrew every trap. They mistook your restraint for weakness, and that misreading became their downfall. Mercy is not softness. Mercy is a signal flare. When ignored, it transforms into a weapon forged by patience. The Lord is slow to anger and great in power, and will not at all acquit the wicked. Nahum 1-3. That is not poetry, it's precedent. They saw you stand still while they ran their mouths, and convinced themselves your silence meant fear. They read discipline as incapacity, mercy as powerlessness. But your silence was never submission, it was strategy. You were never avoiding the fight. You were handing the case to the only tribunal that cannot be bribed. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Romans 12:19. You had enough truth to shred them, enough receipts to burn their carefully crafted image, enough precision to flip the script and humiliate them on demand. And yet you refrained. Why? Because you knew restraint can be the loudest weapon. Strength isn't always proved by striking back. Sometimes it's proved by refusing to waste a single strike. In architecture, a flying buttress holds weight silently. No one notices until the cathedral stands centuries later, unbowed. In physics, potential energy stored in a drawn bow is invisible until the release. In psychology, delayed response multiplies impact, what's called temporal framing. Your restraint was a cathedral under construction, a bow drawn, an unseen resonance gathering frequency. They thought you were still. In reality, you were storing power. He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty. Proverbs 16:32. Perhaps you've asked quietly, did they think I was weak all this time? Did they think I couldn't fight? Did they mistake patience for permission? They did. They bragged, laughed, strutted as though they had won. But every act of restraint was evidence stacking against them. Every moment of silence was a transcript written in invisible ink waiting for light. Their foot shall slide in due time. Deuteronomy 32-35. Mercy is not approval. Delay is not denial. The universe does not withhold justice because it forgot. It withholds to give space for repentance. Nature shows this pattern too. The Arctic fox curls under snowdrifts, not out of defeat, but to conserve heat for spring hunts. The banyan tree extends aerial roots silently until one day it becomes a forest unto itself. The volcano sleeps for decades while pressure mounts beneath, and its eruption reshapes the landscape overnight. Patience can look like stillness, but it is tectonic movement underfoot. They used the space to double down on cruelty, not realizing they were digging their own grave slowly, proudly, and in full view of the world. The story echoes in ordinary lives. Matteo, a quiet warehouse worker, watched as a supervisor framed him for mistakes to hide his own theft. Matteo kept records, stayed silent. When an audit came, his documentation exonerated him and exposed the supervisor's scheme. The man who mocked Matteo's calm was escorted out in handcuffs. Matteo was promoted. Mercy had not been weakness. It had been evidence gathering. Sacred art carries the same message. In Handel's Israel in Egypt, the chorus of plagues thunders after a delicate aria of stillness, mercy, then judgment. This is not coincidence but cosmic choreography. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. When mercy ends, exposure begins. And chosen one. That's exactly what is happening now. The protection they thought they had has lifted. Their alliances are drying up. Their own words are turning against them. The same audience that clapped with them is now questioning everything. Their downfall isn't merely punishment, it's clarity. They were never untouchable. They were simply spared because of you. Now that sparing is gone, you didn't need to destroy them, you only needed to survive them. And your survival is the final verdict. The undeniable proof that their arrogance wrote their own ending. Stand up now. Walk forward with the quiet thunder of vindication. Wear your survival like a crown. Mercy was never your weakness, it was your warning, and now it is their reckoning. They believed delay meant safety. In reality, it was their sentence being written line by line. The universe does not forget. It waits with the precision of an architect, measuring load before setting the keystone in place. The longer it waits, the heavier the judgment falls. For the Lord is a God of judgment. Blessed are all they that wait for him. Isaiah 30:18. That waiting is not softness. It is strategy. They mocked you openly. They whispered your name with arrogance, laughed at your tears, sneered at your resilience. Their whispers were as old as Cain's envy of Abel's, offering mockery of innocence because it reveals corruption. The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. Genesis 4:10. They convinced themselves nothing was coming. No doors slammed shut. No lightning struck. You didn't clap back. They grew bold. They thought silence meant safety. They mistook delay for disinterest. But delay is not disinterest. Delay is build-up. Thunder teaches this. The sky darkens without a sound, but a deep rumble grows beneath until the perfect moment when the entire land trembles. That's how the universe works, not rushing in to spook them, but waiting until the response is undeniable. Patience was never approval, it was precision. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth. James 5-7. Patience is the rope the guilty use to hang themselves. And that is exactly what happened. As time stretched, they mocked harder. They recruited others. They doubled down on lies, believing they were untouchable. Every word was rope. Every scheme was evidence. Their boldness was a multiplier of their own sentence. You may have felt the question burning inside. Why didn't it end sooner? Why did they get away with it so long? Was my silence making me complicit? Yet the waiting was not for them, it was for you. The delay ensured that when judgment landed, no one could call it your revenge. The weight of consequence had to be so undeniable that even their allies could not defend them. Nature echoes this. The glacier seems frozen but carves valleys beneath. The viper coils for hours before striking once. fatal and precise. The baobab tree grows a vast root system underground, long before it rises to shade thousands. Delay is not emptiness, it is hidden construction. He that diggeth a pit shall fall into it. Ecclesiastes 10:8. Their delay was the deep trench into which they are now falling. The story repeats in ordinary life. Miriam, a humble chef in a crowded city, endured years of a competitor stealing her recipes, smearing her online, mocking her restraint. She kept notes, stayed steady. When a health inspector traced contamination back to the competitor's kitchen, her records became evidence. His restaurant closed overnight. Hers was profiled as an example of integrity and resilience. Delay had been documentation. Sacred music mirrors this arc. In Mozart's rarely performed Great Mass in C minor, Along, suspended Kyrie holds on a single tone while the orchestra coils beneath. Then, in one shattering measure, the full choir breaks forth judgment in harmony. This is cosmic choreography, tension before release. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. Habakkuk 2-3. And now, chosen one, the storm has arrived. Their laughter is silent. Their confidence has turned into confusion. The thunder they swore would never come is shaking their foundations. This isn't negotiation, it's retribution. The delay they thought was safety was the multiplier of their sentence. The storm does not miss. It arrives exactly on time. The scales have tipped. The universe is delivering what was always promised. Their arrogance wrote the script. Their actions sealed the verdict. Rise now, not with gloating, but with the calm authority of someone who outlasted every trap. Your survival is the lightning. Your steadiness, the thunder. Your life, the verdict read aloud. Your silence was never weakness. It was evidence written in heaven's ink, sealing their fate long before they realized the trial had begun. Silence is not surrender. It is the strongest testimony the universe can wield against liars. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Exodus 14:14. They mistook your quiet for defeat. They thought your lack of retaliation proved they had broken you, when in truth you were standing as still as a fortress while their storms exhausted themselves. While they shouted, lied, and twisted every detail, you remained composed, not because you had nothing to say, but because you knew exactly who was watching. In that stillness, you echoed Christ before Pilate. He answered him to never a word, insomuch that the governor marveled greatly. Matthew 27-14. Sometimes the loudest argument is made in stillness. Every time you chose peace over retaliation, you were building evidence. Every time you walked away instead of clapping back, the universe documented your integrity and their cruelty. Imagine two fighters in a ring. One throws wild punches, desperate for dominance. The other stands still, calm, letting the reckless one tire out. Every missed swing exposes their lack of control. That was you. They performed. You endured. Your restraint became the mirror of their corruption. Your silence was not absence. It was resonance, like the drawn bow in physics, storing potential energy. Like a cathedral's hidden buttresses carrying weight unseen. He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding. Proverbs 14:29. Perhaps you felt the questions rising like tides. Did my silence make me look weak? Did it make them think I was powerless? How did I lose by not fighting? For a time, yes. They laughed louder. bragged bolder, convinced themselves they'd won. Yet silence does not mean absence. Silence means every injustice was being recorded, every betrayal carefully noted. Be not deceived. God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6-7. You weren't overlooked. You were being documented. Nature carries this sermon. The snow leopard moves without sound for hours before a single leap ends the hunt. The desert cactus stores water through seasons of drought until one night it bursts with a crown of flowers. The deep-sea anglerfish glows in darkness, luring predators to their own entrapment. Restraint is not weakness, it is evidence in motion. They confused your patience with permission, but they were only tightening the noose of their own consequences. History repeats itself in quiet lives. Amina, an unnoticed schoolteacher, endured a colleague stealing her lesson plans, mocking her simplicity. She kept notes, kept teaching, kept silent. When a board audit reviewed the department, her meticulous records exposed the deception. Her colleague was dismissed, and she was promoted to lead curriculum. Her silence did not disqualify her, it qualified her. Sacred art speaks the same truth. In Fauré's Requiem, the Pai Jesu floats above a restless orchestra, gentle, restrained, and yet it carries the heaviest weight of the work. Stillness becomes the most devastating sound. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Isaiah 54-17. The file is now complete. Your silence didn't disqualify you. It proved who you are and revealed who they are. Their arrogance is the only thing left on trial, and the verdict is not up for debate. Vindication isn't just coming, it's justified. Not because you shouted loud enough, but because your silence spoke louder than their chaos. The very thing they mocked is the very thing sealing their downfall. Rise now. Chosen one, wear your restraint as a crown. Let your endurance announce their sentence. What they thought was your weakness has become the strongest evidence of their guilt. They tried to erase you, but the universe is engraving your name in gold with strokes no gossip can smudge. Erasure is temporary, truth is permanent. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever. Isaiah 40-8. The universe always writes in ink, not pencil, and its ink glows with permanence. Chosen one, they thought they held the pen to your story. They believed if they erased your name from conversations, rewrote the narrative, buried your truth under gossip, you would vanish like chalk in rain. And for a while, it looked like they succeeded. People turned cold. Opportunities disappeared. Your character was doubted. It seemed as though their false version of you had become the only version. This is what Joseph endured when his brothers threw him into the pit, yet the same betrayal became the road to Egypt, the place of elevation. But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good. Genesis 50-20. In your life. 2. The pit was not a grave. It was a holding place for the script's next scene. They forgot the universe has editorial rights. Every chapter they tried to destroy is being recovered, and not just recovered, redeemed. Your name isn't being cleared in whispers, it's being restored in boldness. The same lies they spread are now fueling the proof of your authenticity. He shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, and thy judgment as the noonday. Psalm 37-6. The very doors they slammed shut are creaking open again. Not because you begged, but because truth breaks locks they thought were permanent. Perhaps you felt the ache of the question. Why did it take so long? Why did I have to endure being written off? Why was my story hijacked? Because sometimes the universe doesn't just restore, it rewrites. It doesn't merely fix broken pages, it flips the script so completely that your vindication becomes undeniable. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. Habakkuk 2-3. The interruption wasn't the ending, it was the setup for a rewrite so powerful the liars don't even get to footnote it. Nature itself gives parables of this reversal. The nautilus shell grows hidden chambers before revealing its spirals, architecture of beauty formed in secret. The redwood, after fire, sprouts stronger from its base. The Arctic tern circles the earth on migrations longer than any bird, unseen for years, then returns home exact and unerring. What was erased becomes highlighted. What was twisted becomes straightened in full view of those who once doubted you. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill shall be made low. Isaiah 40-4. This pattern echoes in ordinary lives. Raphael, a quiet street artist, was painted as a fraud by a larger gallery that stole his sketches. For months, his name was ridiculed. But when a historian traced a signature hidden under one of the gallery's originals, the truth burst open. Raphael's work was restored to him, and the gallery collapsed in scandal. The same narrative meant to erase him became the headline of his authenticity. Sacred art sings of this too. In Palestrina's Missa Papae Marcelli, a simple chant line disappears into complex polyphony, then re-emerges in blazing clarity. Above all voices, what was hidden becomes the crown. This is not just music, it is prophecy. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Isaiah 54-17. The pen of justice always outlasts the pencil of gossip. And chosen one. That's what is happening now. They no longer get to edit. They no longer get to frame the story in their favor. All they can do is stand back and watch as your name, once dragged through dirt, is lifted, polished, displayed in gold. Your story was never over. It was only interrupted. Now the next chapter belongs to you, bold, permanent, and untouchable. Rise into it. Walk forward as the living proof that erasure cannot kill destiny. They tried to erase your worth, but the universe is now forcing every tongue that cursed you to acknowledge your value aloud. Disrespect shouted in public cannot be undone with apologies whispered in private. For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known. Luke 12-2. Chosen one. They believed they could dishonor you in the open and then whisper regret behind closed doors. They thought invalidating you before a crowd could be undone with a quiet excuse no one else would hear. But the universe is not allowing that, not after the damage. Not after the deliberate attempt to strip you of dignity while others watched. Like David standing before Saul's court while lies were whispered about him, you were absent from the stage where your character was dismantled. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Isaiah 54-17. And yet for a time it felt as though the weapon had pierced. Perhaps you have wondered in the silent hours, will anyone ever admit what they did? Will truth ever surface in the same public square where my name was buried? Will I always be the silent one while they speak? Repentance isn't just feeling sorry, it's restoration. They didn't simply wound your feelings. They tried to dismantle your credibility, stain your name, and bend your character into a lie in places where you weren't present to defend yourself. This is what Christ meant when he said, "Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, first be reconciled to thy brother." Matthew 5:23, 2:4. The universe demands that reconciliation be as visible as the violation. Nature itself testifies to this law of balance. A river poisoned upstream cannot be cleansed by pouring clean water only at its mouth. Restoration must begin at the point of pollution. A monarch butterfly's metamorphosis is not hidden. It breaks open its chrysalis publicly to reveal the wings. The stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner. Psalm 118-22. That same reversal is what you are living. And this pattern echoes in ordinary lives. Marisol, a little-known teacher in São Paulo, was falsely accused of altering exam scores. For months she endured humiliation in front of students and parents. When a state audit finally traced the discrepancy to a corrupt administrator, the department didn't just clear her quietly, they held a press conference to restore her reputation and promoted her to lead inspector. What had been shouted in public was repaired in public, and her honor rose higher than before. Sacred music proclaims this truth as well. In Henry Purcell's anthem, "Let Mine Eyes Run Down with Tears," the opening cry of lament dissolves into a triumphant, "The Lord is righteous," swelling with full choir pain exposed publicly. Righteousness vindicated publicly. "He prepareth a table before me in the presence of mine enemies." Psalm 23-5. Maybe you've whispered inwardly, is this correction about humiliating them? Is it about revenge? Or is it something deeper that heals what was broken? The answer is in the rhythm of justice. Balance isn't halfway. Justice doesn't stop at silence. And anything less than full reversal is unfinished business. The same mouths that mocked you will be pressed to honor you. The same voices that rallied others against you will be forced to point back and admit, "We were wrong." Every knee shall bow, and every tongue shall confess. Philippians 2:10-11. They now face a choice: restore what they stole or watch as the universe does it for them in ways they cannot control. Either way, the outcome is the same. You will be validated not faintly, not in shadows, but boldly in the same spaces where you were once shamed. The stage where they mocked you will be the same stage where your honor is announced. As public as the damage, as loud as the disrespect, he shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, and thy judgment as the noonday. Psalm 37-6. Chosen one. That moment is closer than you think. Because the universe doesn't just repair reputations, it restores honor with the volume turned all the way up. Rise into it. Walk forward as the living testimony that no erasure can silence destiny and no whispered apology can cancel a public coronation. They tried to erase your worth, but the universe is now forcing every tongue that mocked you to honor your name aloud. Disrespect shouted in public cannot be erased, with apologies whispered in private, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known. Luke 12:2. Chosen one. They believed they could dishonor you openly and then mutter regret behind closed doors. They thought invalidating you before a crowd could be undone with a quiet excuse that no one else would ever hear. But the universe is not allowing that, not after the deliberate attempt to strip you of dignity while others watched. Just as David endured slander in Saul's court, you too were dismantled in places where you could not speak for yourself. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. Yet for a time, it felt like their lies had pierced deeply. And maybe you've wrestled with the question in silence. Will anyone ever admit what they did? Will truth ever resurface in the same public square where my honor was buried? Will my worth always remain hidden while their voices dominate? Repentance is not regret, it is restoration. They did not just wound your heart. They tried to dismantle your credibility, stain your name, and twist your identity into something false. Christ himself taught, "First be reconciled to thy brother," Matthew 5:24. The universe demands the same, that reconciliation be as visible as the offense. Creation itself reflects this law. A poisoned river cannot be healed by pouring clean water only at its mouth. Restoration must begin at the point of pollution. The monarch butterfly cannot remain hidden forever. It must break its chrysalis openly. Wings displayed for all to see. The stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner. Psalm 118-22. The dishonored one becomes the crown. And this truth unfolds in ordinary lives. Marisol, a quiet school teacher in São Paulo, was accused of falsifying grades. Parents doubted her integrity. For months, she carried the shame. But when the state audit exposed a corrupt administrator, she wasn't restored with whispers. She was honored in a press conference and promoted to inspector. The same public square that condemned her became the platform of her vindication. Sacred art testifies to this too. In Purcell's anthem, "Let mine eyes run down with tears," lament dissolves into a blazing declaration, "The Lord is righteous." What begins in shame crescendos in public vindication. "He prepareth a table before me in the presence of mine enemies," Psalm 23-5. And perhaps you still ask yourself quietly, is this reversal about revenge? Is it about humiliating them? Or is it about a justice that heals me completely? The answer is in the design of balance. Justice does not end in silence, and correction is not complete until honor is restored with the same volume as dishonor. Every knee shall bow, and every tongue shall confess. Philippians 2:10-11. They face a choice now: restore what they stole, or watch as heaven itself does it in ways they cannot control. Either way, the outcome is fixed. You will be validated, not faintly, not hidden, but boldly in the very spaces where shame once echoed. The stage where you were mocked will be the stage where your honor is announced. He shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, and thy judgment as the noonday. Psalm 37-6. Chosen one. That moment is closer than you imagine. The universe does not merely repair reputations, it restores honor with the volume turned all the way up. Rise into it. Step onto the stage already written for you. Walk forward as the testimony that no erasure can silence destiny, and no whispered apology can cancel a public coronation.